It was one of those perfect spring days in Arlington, where the sun was warm, but not too hot, and a light breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming flowers. I had the day off from teaching, so I decided to take a stroll through Henry Park to enjoy the beautiful weather. As I ambled along the paved path, taking in the vibrant colors of the flower beds and listening to the melodic chirping of birds, I noticed a young man up ahead. He was tapping a white cane in front of him as he walked, clearly feeling his way forward. It didn't take long to realize he was blind. I watched as he paused, turning his head from side to side as if trying to get his bearings. Without thinking, my feet carried me towards him. "Excuse me," I called out gently as I approached. "It looks like you could use some help. Would you like me to guide you somewhere?" The man turned in my direction, a warm smile spreading across his face. Even behind his dark sunglasses, I could sense eyes that radiated kindness. "Why, thank you, that's very kind of you," he replied. His voice was rich and mellow. "I'm just trying to find one of the park benches so I can enjoy this lovely day. Of course, let me lead the way." I offered my arm, and he looped his hand through it. "I'm Emily, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Emily. I'm Jason." We started walking again, my steps slowing to match his careful pace. An easy silence fell between us, but it didn't feel awkward. There was something calming about Jason's presence. Up ahead, I spotted an empty bench nestled under a blossoming cherry tree. "How about that one over there?" I asked, guiding him towards it. Jason's face turned in the direction I'd indicated. "Sounds perfect." As we settled onto the bench, I stole a glance at my new acquaintance. He can't have been more than a few years younger than me, probably mid-20s. Tall and slender with neatly trimmed brown hair and a smattering of light freckles across his nose. "So, Jason," I began, "what brings you to the park today?" After our initial meeting at the park, Jason and I kept running into each other. Whether it was grabbing coffee at the corner cafe or strolling along the Potomac River Trail, we struck up easy conversations whenever our paths crossed. I quickly learned that Jason worked as a software developer at a tech startup in Rosslyn. He spoke with such animation about writing code, breaking down complex programs into simple analogies that made me feel like I could understand computing, despite being technologically challenged myself. "It's like building with Legos," he'd explain with a grin. "You just have to find the right pieces and put them together in a certain order. Except with code, one misplaced piece can make the whole thing fall apart." Jason Emily, fascinated by his passion. "Do you just memorize all the code?" He chuckled. "Not exactly. My computer reads it out loud to me with a text-to-speech program. I have a crazy good auditory memory." "That's incredible," I marveled. "I can barely remember my kids' names some days, let alone lines of code." "Well, maybe you just need to turn your life into an equation," he teased back. "Then it'll be easy as pie." We both dissolved into laughter at his silly pun. In those early days, our conversations flowed so naturally, full of ease and humor. Jason had this way of making me feel completely at ease, like we'd known each other for years. In turn, I regaled him with stories from my teaching job, the crazy things my 7th graders would say or do, the hard-won victories when a struggling student finally grasped a difficult concept. He listened with rapt attention, always full of insightful questions and comments. "Emily, you must have the patience of a saint," he said one afternoon as we shared an ice cream cone on the National Mall. "I don't know how you wrangle those little terrors all day." I nudged his shoulder playfully. "Hey now, they're not terrors. Just passionate learners." "If you say so," Jason grinned, taking an exaggerated lick of his double fudge ice cream. "I'm sticking with coding. No screaming tweens, just me and the almighty computer. As the warm spring days turned to summer, Jason and I spent more and more time together, our friendship deepening with every shared experience. I'd never felt so comfortable and understood by another person before. He made me feel seen, appreciated for exactly who I was, quirks and all. Looking back, I realize those were the innocent days before my heart became hopelessly ensnared by the wonderful man with sightless eyes that somehow allowed him to see me more clearly than anyone else ever had. As summer stretched on, Jason and I fell into a rhythm of spending our weekends together exploring different corners of Arlington. We'd meet up for brunch, then pick an activity for the day. Maybe hiking a trail at Theodore Roosevelt Island or catching an outdoor concert at the Lubber Run Amphitheater. No matter what we did, Jason seemed to experience it all with a profound appreciation I'd never witnessed before. He'd pause frequently, tilting his face up toward the warmth of the sun or closing his eyes to better focus on the sounds and scents around us. One sunny Saturday, we decided to revisit Hendry Park, the place where we'd first met months prior. I grabbed us a couple of hot dogs from the vendor near the entrance, then guided Jason over to our favorite shaded bench. "Ah, I can already smell those blooming cherry trees," he said as we settled onto the worn wooden slats. "And there's a slight tinny flavor on my tongue. I bet that little creek is nearby." I smiled, shaking my head in amazement. "Your senses are incredible, Jason. It's like you can paint an entire world just from a few details." He laughed lightly. "When you can't see, you learn to experience things a little differently." He raised his hot dog to his face, inhaling deeply through his nose. "This smells absolutely delicious. Worth savoring every bite." We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, giving me time to simply observe the way Jason immersed himself in the experience. From the intense furrow of his brow as he carefully chewed and tasted, to the look of sheer bliss that would flit across his face with each satisfying swallow. "You know," I ventured once we'd finished eating, "I don't think I fully appreciated moments like this before you came into my life." Jason turned toward me, eyebrows raised inquisitively. "What do you mean?" Brushing away a few stray hot dog crumbs, I tried to put it into words. "It's like, before you, I just rushed through my days, rarely stopping to really experience the little things around me. But you've taught me to open my eyes." No pun intended, I added with a chuckle. A slow smile spread across Jason's face. "Well then, care to put those newly opened eyes to use? Describe the park to me, Emily. I want to see it through your perspective for a change." So I did. I painted him a picture with words, detailing the dappled light filtering through the leafy branches above us, the vibrant splashes of color from flower beds in full bloom, the dance of jasmine-scented breezes and melodies of singing birds. With each vivid brushstroke of my descriptions, a look of serenity stole across Jason's features. By the time I finished, he was beaming. "That was beautiful, Em. Thank you for helping me see." He reached over and gave my hand a gentle squeeze, sending tingles down my spine. In that moment, my heart felt dangerously full, of wonder, of gratitude, but also a deeper longing that I couldn't quite put my finger on yet. Little did I know how delicately my feelings for Jason were blossoming, just like the flowers surrounding us, or how those tender buds of affection would come to be tested in the difficult days ahead. As the lazy days of summer faded into fall, I started to notice a change in Jason. The perpetual warmth and joy that usually radiated from him seemed to dim, like clouds drifting across the sun. Our easy banter was peppered with longer stretches of pensive silence. Something was weighing on his mind, but he kept whatever it was locked inside. One crisp October evening, we were strolling along the Mount Vernon Trail after catching a film at the Arlington Draft House. The colors of the setting sun painted the Potomac River in shimmering shades of orange and pink, a breathtaking sight that Jason couldn't fully appreciate. "Isn't the view just incredible?" I remarked, trying to jolly the melancholy mood. When Jason didn't respond, I jostled his arm gently. "Hey, you okay over there?" He let out a heavy sigh. "Yeah, sorry. I'm fine. Just got a little lost in my own head." We walked a few more paces before he spoke again. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I replied, concern furrowing my brow. "What's on your mind?" Jason worried his bottom lip. "Does it? I don't know, does it ever bother you? You know, that I can't actually see anything?" The question caught me off guard. "What? No, Jason, of course not. Why would you even think that?" He shrugged despondently. "It's just, we go to all these beautiful places, experience all these amazing things, but for me, it'll always be incomplete, hollow." His tone took on an edge of bitterness. "All I get are brief glimpses, like faint outlines with all the details blurred out." "Jason." I stopped walking and gently took his hand, pulling him around to face me. "Your blindness doesn't make your experiences any less valid or real. You connect with the world so deeply, in ways I could never even comprehend." He shook his head doubtfully. "I don't know, Em. Sometimes it feels like I'm just drifting on the outskirts, never able to fully immerse myself, and I can't help but wonder." His voice dropped to a pained whisper. "What's the point of me even being here?" The anguish etched on his features pierced straight through me. In that moment, I glimpsed the heavy burden Jason carried every day, the loneliness of being trapped in darkness, the aching sense of isolation. My heart broke for this beautiful soul who constantly fought to find light. "Don't you ever think that?" I said fiercely, squeezing his hands tighter. "You bring more joy, more life to this world than most people with perfect vision ever could. I see you, Jason. All of you. And you're one of the most amazing people I've ever known." Tears glistened in the corners of his eyes as he pulled me into a tight embrace. We stood there for a long moment, holding each other close as the river breezes swirled around us. I silently willed all my love and support to pour into him, hoping it might help ease his suffering just a little while. But inside, worry gnawed at me. Jason's struggle with his blindness clearly ran deeper than I realized. If he continued to let doubt and insecurity cloud his brilliant spirit, what would that mean for us? For the first time, I felt a flicker of fear that our closeness might not be strong enough to light his way out of the darkness. After Jason's emotional confession that night on the Mount Vernon trail, I knew I couldn't just sit idly by while he battled his inner demons. He needed me, needed to feel supported and reminded of how incredible he was, blindness and all. So over the next few weeks, I made it my mission to plan activities that engaged Jason's other senses in new, exciting ways. We went to concerts where the pounding bass lines reverberated through our chests, cooking classes that filled the air with rich, tantalizing aromas. I even dragged him to a couple paint nights, letting him experience the textures and motions of brushing pigments across canvas. At first, Jason seemed hesitant, almost embarrassed by my efforts. You don't have to go to all this trouble just for me," he protested one evening as we pulled up to the Arlington Pottery Studio for a ceramics workshop. I shot him a look over the console. "Don't even start with me, mister. We're doing this, and you're going to have fun. That's an order." A grudging smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Sir, yes sir." But as time went on, I could see Jason's spirits start to lift a little more with each new experience. The way his fingers would dance across the grooved surface of a hand-thrown pot, mapping out every curve and ridge, how his face would absolutely light up whenever a new flavor exploded across his taste buds during a cooking class. Seeing that spark of joy and wonder reignited in him made my heart swell with warmth. This was the Jason I'd fallen for, the one who savored every beautiful detail the world had to offer, even if he couldn't physically see it. Of course, he still had his moments of melancholy and self-doubt. On those days, I'd simply sit beside him in peaceful silence until the storm clouds passed, gently reminding him that I wasn't going anywhere. One night after a particularly difficult therapy session, Jason retreated into himself, hunched on the sofa with his shoulders hunched forward defensively. Sensing his fragile state, I settled in next to him and rested my head on his shoulder. For a long while, neither of us spoke. Jason's ragged breaths were the only sound filling the tension-thick air. Eventually, I felt him relax infinitesimally, his stiff posture softening just enough to press his cheek against the top of my head. "I'm so tired of fighting this, he murmured, sounding utterly drained, of struggling to find my place in a world that insists on operating solely through sight." My heart itched to hear the pain lacing his words. Reaching out, I laced my fingers through his and gave them a reassuring squeeze. "Then let me be your eyes for a while," I said simply. "We'll get through this together, one small step at a time. You don't have to face this alone anymore." Jason's shoulders shuddered with a stifled sob. Shifting, he pulled me into the circle of his arms, holding me tightly against his chest. I could feel the frantic pounding of his heart slowly evening out, syncing with the soothing rhythm of my own. In that embrace, we forged an unspoken pact. I would be his anchor in the storms, his beacon of hope in the darkness. And in return, Jason would open himself up and let me inside those heavily guarded walls he'd built up over the years. It was a baby step in the right direction, but after feeling so adrift, taking that first tiny stride toward healing together gave us both a renewed sense of courage to keep moving forward, side by side. As winter's chill descended over Arlington, Jason and I grew closer than ever. We'd spent months slowly breaking down the walls between us, forging a bond of trust and understanding that ran soul deep. In his presence, I felt wholly seen and accepted for who I was, flaws and all, and I hoped Jason felt that same unconditional acceptance from me. Which is why, one crisp evening in early December, I finally found the courage to lay my heart bare. We were tucked away in a cozy corner booth at Carlene's Diner, sharing a plate of their famous disco fries and swapping stories about our terrible dating histories from before we'd met. "No, I'm serious." Jason was laughing, waving a fry emphatically. The guy actually tried to convince me that he could communicate telepathically with squirrels. Said they were highly evolved and carrying messages from the future or something. I had to grip the table to keep from doubling over. "Please tell me you didn't go on a second date with Squirrel Boy." "Are you kidding?" He took an indignant bite of fry. "I value my sanity too much for that." Noped right out of there after the check arrived. "Wise man," I managed once my giggles subsided. "Although I can't really judge, remember my date from hell with Spreadsheet Sam." Jason groaned dramatically. "How could I forget? The guy who calculated things like optimum chew rates and napkin origami folding patterns." He shuddered in mock horror. "Makes my telepathic squirrel seem downright normal." "Exactly." I pointed my own fry at him in emphasis. "We're two peas in an incredibly weird pod, my friend." That's when it hit me. In a world full of bizarre matches and dysfunction, Jason felt like the missing piece that made everything click into place for me, my very own normal amongst the chaos. Before I could overthink it, the words came tumbling out. "God, I love you so much, Jason." His expression instantly sobered, eyebrows raised quizzically. "What did you say?" "Oh God, what had I done?" I opened and closed my mouth a few times, trying to formulate an excuse or play it off as nothing. But looking into those soft brown eyes, I knew denying my feelings would be a disservice to us both. So I leaned across the table, tentatively covering his hand with mine. "I said I love you," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "As more than just friends. I'm in love with you." For a terrifying moment, Jason was completely still and silent, his face utterly unreadable. Then, slowly, his features softened into a look of pure adoration. Turning his hand over, he wove his fingers through mine and brought them to his lips, pressing a tender kiss to my knuckles. "Emily," he murmured, a hint of wonder in his tone. "From the moment we met, you've been changing my world, letting me see it with new eyes. I never dreamed I could be this happy, this whole. You make me feel alive." He reached across the table to cup my face, his thumb caressing my cheek with incredible tenderness. "I love you too, Em, with every piece of my heart." Fighting back joyful tears, I leaned forward to capture his lips in a searing but impossibly soft kiss. It felt like coming home. Safe, warm, euphoric bliss. As we pulled apart, breathless but beaming, I was struck by how different Jason looked in that moment. Not because his blindness had miraculously vanished, but because the weight he'd been carrying for so long finally seemed lifted from his shoulders, like my love had somehow given him the courage to start really living again. Sitting there gazing into his shining face, I felt a profound sense of peace. No matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, side by side, two souls carving out their own unique path, perfectly content to be each other's guide. After our confessions at the diner that night, everything seemed to shift into a new, exhilarating gear for Jason and me. Any lingering walls or hesitations between us crumbled away, replaced by an openness and intimacy that felt so natural, like two puzzle pieces finally slotting into place. In the days and weeks that followed, we stumbled through all the giddy, heart-fluttering firsts of a new relationship. Our first real date night, which involved a romantic Italian dinner and me nearly choking on my ravioli from laughing too hard at one of Jason's silly jokes. Our first time spending the night together, all tangled limbs and drowsy morning snuggles. The first time Jason slipped and called me his girlfriend, immediately turning bright red before I pulled him in for a searing kiss. Life took on an effervescent glow, every little moment seeming to burst with vivid colors and sensations. Jason's presence illuminated it all, helping me see the hidden beauty and joy woven into even the most mundane of experiences. On my 28th birthday in late February, he surprised me by arranging an outing to the Udvar Hazy Air and Space Museum. As we strolled through the hangar exhibits, I described every intricate detail of the aircraft and shuttles to him, from the sleek curves of the fighter jet fuselages to the scuffed and scorched tiles of the space capsules. Jason drank it all in with rapt fascination, occasionally reaching out to trace the craft's surfaces with reverent fingertips. "You're giving me a whole new appreciation for flying machines," he murmured in an awed tone as we admired the towering space shuttle Discovery. "Can you imagine being a pioneer, leaving the Earth's atmosphere for the first time and seeing our planet hanging in the void?" He shook his head slowly. "I'll never fully grasp that vastness and isolation, but I'm grateful to have your eyes helping me glimpse a fragment of it." Impulsively, I laced my fingers through his and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "I love you," I whispered simply. Jason's face broke into that beautifully unguarded smile that never failed to make my heart flip in my chest. Tugging me closer, he buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. "And I love you." His words were slightly muffled against my skin. "You've brought so much light into my world, Em. I'm the luckiest man alive." We stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms amidst the grand monuments to humanity's achievements, the world seeming to tilt and narrow until it contained just the two of us. My past and Jason's present had collided to set us both on an uncharted trajectory, one I knew would be extraordinary. That evening, as we curled up together on my battered sofa, swapping occasional lazy kisses, I felt an impulsive thrill race through me. "Hey," I nudged Jason's shoulder to get his attention. "Can I ask you something?" His eyes opened lazily. "What's up?" Drawing in a steadying breath, I decided to just rip off the band-aid. "What do you think about moving in together?" For the briefest flicker, surprise registered on Jason's features before that brilliant smile bloomed across his face. "You sure about that?" he teased. "Because if you think my dirty socks are bad now, just wait till you're stuck with them 24/7. I rolled my eyes good-naturedly. "Oh please, your weird organizational habits would keep my place looking like a museum. I'm more worried about tripping over you in the kitchen at 3 a.m. while you're coding away." "Fair point," he chuckled. Then his expression softened, eyes crinkling at the corners. "You know what, Emily? I think moving in together sounds absolutely perfect." Letting out a giddy laugh, I toppled forward to capture his lips in a searing kiss, all my love and joy pouring out through that one simple gesture. When we finally resurfaced for air, foreheads pressed together, Jason's hands traced my face almost reverently. "My whole life, I've felt like I was navigating through fog, never able to see what lay ahead," he murmured. "But with you beside me, it's like the mist is finally clearing. For the first time, the future feels bright, full of endless possibilities waiting to be explored." His fingers threaded through my hair as he nuzzled closer. "I can't wait to take those first steps with you, together." In that moment, curled against the man I loved more than anything, envisioning the beautiful road stretching out before us, all my doubts and fears fell away. Jason was my home, my safe harbor, and wherever we roamed, as long as we had each other, we'd be okay. Our love blazed fierce and certain, finally cutting through the darkness that had cloaked Jason's world for so long, and I knew, without a shred of doubt, that its radiant light would guide us forward into whatever adventures lay ahead. Looking back over the years Jason and I have shared, I'm still in awe at the winding, serendipitous path that brought us together. If you told me a decade ago that the kind-eyed stranger I helped find a park bench would become the heart and soul mate who completed me, I probably would have laughed in your face. But that's the amazing thing about life and love. They never follow any predetermined script or timeline we try to impose. The universe simply guides your steps, one after another, until you find yourself exactly where you were meant to be all along, with who you were meant to be with. For Jason and me, those meandering steps led to a year of deliriously happy cohabitation before he finally got down on one knee and proposed in the hallway of our apartment building. We laughed and cried and stumbled over our vows during a small backyard ceremony, surrounded by the loved ones who had cheered us on every step of our journey. Even after our I do's, the path kept winding and surprising us. Like when Jason landed his dream job at a Silicon Valley tech giant, prompting a cross-country move that filled me with equal parts terror and exhilaration. Our firstborn daughter's arrival 3 years later, which brought us both to our knees with joy and worry in equal measure as we navigated those crazy newborn days. The ups and downs, the stumbles and triumphs, we weathered them all side by side, an unshakable team dedicated to helping each other live life to the fullest. And through it all, even after over a decade of marriage and now chasing two rambunctious kids around. That spark of love and adoration I felt upon first meeting Jason has never once dimmed. If anything, watching him pour his whole heart into being a father has made the flame burn brighter and hotter than ever before. Some nights, after the kiddos are finally down for the night, I'll find Jason out on our little back patio, tilting his face up towards the inky blanket of stars with a look of pure serenity. Even though he can't see their pinprick lights, he seems to bask in their celestial grandeur all the same. You know, from an early age, I used to have this little thought experiment I'd do, he told me once, lacing his fingers through mine. I'd imagine all the people out there under the same canopy of stars, connected across nations and oceans by the warmth and wonder radiating down on all of us equally. It helped me feel anchored, part of something bigger than my own little world. My chest constricted at the simple profoundness of his perspective. "That's beautiful, babe." He gave my hand a squeeze, the edges of his mouth curling upwards. "You're my celestial anchor, my guiding light that helps me find my way through any darkness, my own private constellation to steer by." In that moment, I understood that our bond transcended anything as trite as mere physical vision. From that very first meeting, Jason saw me with a clarity most people spend entire lifetimes trying to find. He peered straight into the depths of my soul and recognized his other half, two spirits inexplicably intertwined across the vast cosmos. So, if you'll allow me to get a little cheesy and metaphysical for a second, maybe, just maybe, the best kind of love is the love that lets you see into infinity itself. And if that's the metric, then Jason and I have the most gorgeous, endless view of all. As our story continues unfolding with all its inevitable twists and turns, I know there will be times that test us, maybe even momentarily cloud our way forward. But our devotion, that boundless expanse of adoration stretching between our hearts, will continue burning bright and immutable, a radiant force brighter than any suns or stars, guiding our path together through every unknown horizon. Because at the end of each day, all that really matters is having your soulmate by your side as you bask in the endless beauty of this crazy, wonderful life. And by that measure, Jason and I are, and always will be, among the luckiest explorers of all. Thanks for watching. Give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories exploring the depths of the human experience. And see you soon.